tardes y bienvenidos.
Good afternoon and welcome on this new edition of this series. So I'm seeing people that I know. That's great. Of this XR Escena. As you know, this month has been a little bit more special. Some weeks ago, we held an event here about music. And as usual, everything that happens here will be uploaded at our website, and you can access it through the Fundación Telefónica website. We will pay attention in social media in case people that watch us through streaming wants to make any comment, ask any question, etc. So, as I was telling you, and as I repeated, many things that we're going to mention here today doesn't make sense until we don't have experiences with it. So for it's more than 2 years since we started with this project at the fourth floor of the showroom that will be open, but at this special occasion we'll start holding special weeks devoted to special topics. We've called it as Snacks of Espacio XR, because this event that is through the collaboration with the British Council, well, we're working on holding a great event, a great festival that will happen in January, probably. And we want to warm up, we want to bring some contents here so that the space that we have, the fourth floor, can hold different special weeks about the topics that will be seen at the festival. We will start from right now. If you log in on the Fundación Telefónica website, you can book for this week. It will be from tomorrow until the 10th of June. Lucas, correct me if I'm wrong. Yes, at the XR space on the fourth floor. Everything that will be mentioned here today, you will be able to experience it on the fourth floor. Sometimes we hold a small showroom here, and this is a very special event because you will have a whole week to register, to tell everybody you want, to move it through the social media, to help us, because it's a great effort that we are making in order to curate this content, in order to choose these projects, and you'll have the whole week to understand it and to take advantage of it, apart from today's presentation, of course. As I was telling you, this event is in collaboration with the British Council, and one of the contributions that the British Council is making for this edition, and with all these snacks that we will hold, they are useful to introduce one of our first speakers, is to create this selection that, in this case, for this week, it has been made by Catherine Allen. As I don't want to be mistaken, because it always happens with people's resumes, I always make mistakes, I'm going to introduce herself so that she can tell us what she has been doing, so that she can explain what she's doing. She has been awarded with a BAFTA award. She has founded the company Línea Immersive, and she was one of the main characters in the visual industry at the United Kingdom. Her speech will be a little bit longer than usual because we'll have a brief Q&A session, and we'll continue with the next format. So without further ado, I invite Catherine to join me at the stage and to continue with the speech. Thank you very much to you all.
Thank you so much for having me here today in Madrid. I'm really excited to introduce you to some of the best of British virtual reality, which involves the collaborations with some of the biggest names in this space. There is heaps of future potential for this medium, so it does give me such great pleasure to be here and demonstrate this potential. And this potential today and over the next few weeks, the part of this potential we'll be exploring is the performing arts, and this is what this showcase is about. I'll give you a little bit about my background, and then I'll tell you a bit about Arts VR. What is Arts VR? I'll talk about the UK industry, and then we'll move on to discussing the pieces themselves and why, as the curator of this showcase, I chose them. So this is, I suppose, a very quick summary of some of my background in the emerging virtual reality industry. I worked from 2015 with the BBC as a producer of virtual reality. And this was very, very early days. 2015, the Oculus Rift wasn't even out to the public yet. Most of my colleagues had never tried VR or often even heard of it. So there was a lot of persuasion to be done, especially when you're working on a project like my first project with the BBC that I produced, Easterizing Voice of a Rebel. It's about a sensitive part of history. It was for the centenary of Easterizing, and we explored it in a way which the BBC had never done before. So not only was it a sort of sensitive topic, it was also a new medium. Next, after that, I produced No Small Talk, which was totally different in the style of content. It's a chat show aimed specifically at young women. It was essentially me saying I want to create something for my friends that makes virtual reality accessible to them. There's already a gender gap in virtual reality that I wanted to address, and that's what we did. We made No Small Talk. My work was on at National Theatre, the Imperial War Museum. It's still on the BBC website, and you can now access it on the new Oculus Go, Samsung Gear VR, and the Oculus platform. So that's a bit of my background before Limina. But I actually, to be honest, I got a bit frustrated making virtual reality in 2015, 2016. I got frustrated because there wasn't an audience yet. I touched on that gender gap, but there's so much patchiness, there's so many issues when it comes to getting virtual reality to broader audiences, and we have a long way to go. So I decided to focus on that, and I started Limina Immersive. What we want to do is bring immersive media to broader audiences. We want to cross that gap on the technology adoption curve, that notorious chasm between early adopters and the early majority. We want to bring virtual reality to as many people as possible and as many diverse groups of people as possible early on, so that it can become more inclusive and healthy from the beginning. So over the last, couple of years, since end of 2016, I've been working on the industry side of things. We've run events like this one, the Limina VR Weekender, and various other festivals and seasons of VR throughout the UK. This is an image of our VR theatre space that we set up in Watershed, where I'm based in Bristol. But we've worked quite a bit as well on building the industry. So from our public perspective, yes, we look like a festivals and events company, and I'm a curator of VR, but behind the scenes, we're applying those learnings to industry reports, projects with government agencies, working with city councils, working on building this industry and really understanding how it can be built in the best possible way for the future. So there's a bit of background on me and how I've come to this project with the British Council. What draws me towards it, obviously, we are bringing VR to broader audiences and getting it international. But now I want to talk about what actually is arts VR, or cultural VR. What is it about these pieces that I'm going to tell you about, that I've curated for this showcase, that makes them arts VR? So I tried to just define it. What is arts VR content? Well, there's several types of arts VR content. You get arts VR where VR is the arts form. So the piece is native to that medium. So it would be something that could not in any way be realized in any other medium. It might be a piece that is even sold as a piece of VR art on the art market and as limited edition, or would go on in art galleries. Then you've also got arts capture. Arts capture is using VR to record existing arts activity. Often works quite well with dance, for instance, because it can capture that sort of visceralness, the intimacy of it. Can also work well for theatre, music. It's a great way of capturing the arts, and often there's actually nothing wrong with putting a 360 camera in the midst of some performance happening and just capturing it and having it for either as part of an archive or to get it to more people. And then you've got a really interesting category, and I think many of these pieces I've curated fit into this category, which is the adaptation or the fusion. So there might be a piece, for instance, an opera, which has been performed time and time again, but then has been adapted for this new medium, for VR. There might be fusions, real mashups, where something feels at one point like capturing, say, a dance piece, but then it moves into something which maybe some sort of trippy journey or something, or using lots of special effects that you could just not get in real life. So as a structure to see Arts VR, I personally find this very helpful. And then who is Arts VR made by? Well, in short, it can be made by anyone. If you've got an artistic intent and you want to make VR, then it's Arts VR. So arts organisations could be a separate studio, production company, independent artists, or a collaboration. And most of the pieces that we're seeing as part of this showcase are collaborations, and I think that's where we've seen some of the best work come out. So now moving on to what makes VR so special from an arts perspective? And you're probably wondering, why am I showing an old painting when we're talking about something so new, so modern? Well, this is one of the first known uses of perspective in painting. It's a piece called The Tribute Money from the early 1400s. You may well be familiar with it, especially if you know lots about art history. And using perspective, you'll see that illusion was part of the way that the story was told. Illusion was how information was communicated. Now, people have been using illusion before that. People have been using illusion in theatre. People have been using illusion as part of storytelling, probably. But this was where illusion was bottled and captured and then shared and scaled in painting form, and lots of people could see it. And we've just been moving along this continuum. As humans have continued, have evolved, we've also got better and better with our art at doing simulation. And VR, virtual reality, is essentially one grand illusion. It is the simulation of another time or another place, something that you maybe could experience in real life or couldn't experience in real life. And that's why, from an arts perspective, I find it really exciting. For artists, they have this new superpower where they can mimic reality. And it's actually a very natural evolution of art and art history that we get better and better at simulation. Obviously, representation, for instance, novels in the third person are still important. Obviously, we still will have a hunger for symbolic work, but this just demonstrates where we're going. Now, to talk about the UK. This is a heat map of immersive activity, so specialist companies and companies who've been heavily involved in the immersive economy in the UK. And the first thing you'll probably see here is that the blue represents the most concentration of organisations. You'll probably see that it's not all London-centric, which really excites me. I think an industry which is more evenly spread across the country has got the potential to be more healthy. So I think that's great. This heat map here is taken from a very recent report that you might find useful. It's called The Immersive Economy, and it's by Immerse UK and Innovate UK, two government agencies in the UK who both have lots of involvement in the immersive industries. And the report gives you a really good overview of the UK immersive media economy. So that's one thing that was in this report. Another thing, which this is pretty exciting, I think, from the UK's perspective, is that we have 9% estimated of global market share. So, and also if we grow in line with forecasts for VR as a whole, then this year will generate 1 billion in sales. So virtual reality sales, B2B, B2C in the UK. So things are growing, and they're growing fast. We're also forecast to grow at a faster rate than any other creative industry. And interestingly, PwC, the consultancy accountants firm, in another report they did, they forecast that by 2021 will be the fastest growing and largest VR industry in the whole of the EMEA region. So the UK is one to watch, but it's still early days. And we know that collaboration is important. I'll give you just an idea of who these leading creators are. You've got your existing sort of large media publishers like The Guardian. They've done lots of VR, had a VR department. Sky, the BBC that I was involved with. But also you've got these, what I call VR native companies. Companies who have actually just done nothing else but virtual reality. And they may have even been doing virtual reality in previous waves of it in the 90s, in the 80s. So there's companies like Rewind, Visualize, VR City, BDH, Factory 42. I could go on and on and on. But those are the ones to watch, I think, among others, in the arts space. So now I'm going to tell you a bit about the pieces that I have curated. This here is a snapshot from Giselle VR, which is a collaboration between the English National Ballet, Sky's virtual reality team, and Factory 42. Now, Tamara Rojo, she's going to be speaking later, so I'm not going to say so much about this. I'll just give you a bit of an idea so you can see how it fits with the other pieces. It came out as one of the first, in fact, the first virtual reality commission that Sky had made. So this was really a landmark project. It was 2016 when this piece came out, and it went straight onto Sky's virtual reality app, which is available to anyone who's got a Google Cardboard. So it was really available to be viewed by lots and lots of people. The choreographer, Akram Khan, probably heard of him, very well known in the art space. And the great thing, this piece, Tamara's in it, as you can see. We get to get up close and personal. We get this visceral performance by Tamara, who is English National Ballet's lead principal and creative director. So I chose it because the dance quality is really, really high. It's a great example of an adaptation into virtual reality work. And also the atmosphere, you just really feel the atmosphere. The venue that they chose, this sort of warehouse space, it's not what you'd expect for ballet, is it? Also, Tamara's Spanish. So there's a great example there of Spanish-British connections, collaboration. It shows that, skills don't really have borders. So I'm really excited to see her speak later. Then, this is a screenshot from Fabulous Wonderland, which is the National Theatre and Damon Albarn's piece. They released this, again, same year, 2016, and they made it with 59 productions and Play Nicely. So quite a few parties there. You'll see this trend a lot with virtual reality. The piece allows you to become Alice and go down the rabbit hole into Wonderland's sunshine garden. You meet the Cheshire Cat, he serenades you, and the whole piece is scored by Damon Albarn of Blur and the Gorillaz. The piece was inspired and came out at the same time as the Wonderland experience, the whole musical and cross-platform project that the National Theatre did. They actually had in their lobby, they set up an installation where you could go and become Alice and go down the rabbit hole. And when I tried this out, Toby Coffey, who's their head of digital, showed me personally. And I have to say, I was absolutely flabbergasted at the way that they'd done this installation. It was set up as a toilet cubicle. So you go into this toilet cubicle with lots of graffiti. It's meant to look like it's from Alice's school. The way they've reimagined it was as if she was a teenager at school, and if the rabbit hole is her on her phone. You go into this toilet, and then off you go. You've gone down the rabbit hole and into this crazy, bonkers, fantastic sort of VR music video. It has to be seen to be believed, I think. And then from this piece, the National Theatre went on to do so much more in virtual reality. It was a great start because now they have their own immersive storytelling studio. And since they have made several really critically acclaimed pieces. So I would recommend that you check out the National Theatre's work. I mean, the reason why I chose it, context. Unfortunately, we don't have a toilet cubicle here over the next few weeks, but I thought that was something really clever. But also, and you may notice this yourself about it, the piece really thinks about behavioural change. you can tell they've really crafted it in mind. So you go in feeling one way, you might feel a bit tired or stressed, or, you have all this baggage from the day. You go into it, and often what happens to people, most people I've spoken to about this piece, is you come out feeling excitable and giddy. It really makes you feel good. Tweaks your joy glands, So I would recommend this piece, especially if you're looking for a pick-me-up. The next piece I'm going to talk about is called Empire Soldiers. And this came out a bit later in 2017. It's made by a company called Metro Bolo Dodo. The company Metro Bolo Dodo actually started off as a theatre company who were very digital. They did a lot of projection mapping and immersive audio. They're a company that I was aware of when I was a teenager, and I saw quite a bit of their work as a young person because they're based in Leicester, and I grew up near Leicester in a very little town called Melton Mowbray. So I was a real fangirl of their work as a young person and very inspired by it. So it does give me a lot of joy to be able to show their work here, and also to show how the virtual reality experiences that are coming out of the UK are from not just London. The experience itself transports audiences on the journeys of servicemen from the Caribbean. So they were soldiers who were fighting in World War I in the trenches for Britain, who are from, the whole series is about soldiers from the Empire, and this particular one is about soldiers from the Caribbean. And you experience their story. And these are stories which are often untold. They're stories that you don't hear very much. And actually, it's sad to say that they're stories that, I had no idea about this, the way that servicemen, they fought in World War I, and they came out and they thought, servicemen from the Empire at the time, from the Caribbean, they thought they were going to be treated with dignity and welcomed, and the piece shows how their expectations were not met, and the very sad racism that even now still exists built into structures, built into the infrastructure of the UK. So this work was a really brave and important piece because it tells stories that haven't been told very much before. And one of the reasons why I chose it was because I think that's what you get from when you've got a multicultural city. Leicester is one of the most multicultural cities in the UK, and that cultural diversity is really one of its strengths, and great artistic work comes out of that. And I think that having that kind of culture allows work like this, quite challenging work, to come out. So it's a piece that, for me, really opened my eyes and is a very important piece of work. Next, we've got Magic Butterfly. This experience, again, came out in 2017, and it was a collaboration between the Welsh National Opera and Rewind, the VR company I mentioned earlier, who are quite sort of ubiquitous in the British VR scene. It's an adaptation of a classic, Puccini's Madame Butterfly. And the reason why I chose it is because we were talking about adaptations earlier, and we were talking about that fusion between adaptation and, the fusion between capture and something that is VR native. And this really is that fusion. You can never experience opera like this in real life. I mean, you can see the style, you can see the animation. It's quite something. And the atmosphere that it creates, I mean, I don't want to give too much away, but it just brings something out of the opera, something I studied as part of my degree, of this particular part of the opera that I just hadn't experienced before. And it shows how VR, doing things you just couldn't do in real life, like visualize something in this style, allows you to experience older works of art in new ways. And so I'll come back to this point a few times, I think, that virtual reality is as relevant to the past as it is to the future. Yes, it's got a reputation as a futuristic new medium, but it can help us see the past, it can help us bring out works from the past in different ways. And then the final piece, you see I've done this chronologically. This is The Guardian's Celestial Motion, and it came out actually only a few weeks ago. It came out in April. So we're really, really lucky to have this here. So The Guardian made it with the Alexander Whitley Dance Company and Sadler's Wells. Sadler's Wells, who are sort of one of the UK's, if not the main contemporary dance venue in the UK. And for The Guardian, this was the first time that they'd made any virtual reality that wasn't documentary. They'd actually done a lot of factual virtual reality in the last few years, some really great stuff. But this piece was a departure for them. I mean, you wouldn't expect The Guardian, would you, to make and release a dance piece? But they did. And I say it's not factual, but actually, that's a lie. The reason why is because they collaborated with physicists who are experts in space and the Solar Dynamics Observatory to get these incredible images of the sun. So you've got science and you've got creativity seamlessly woven together. Coming back to Britain's strengths, I think that's something that Britain's really, really good at, and something that we're seeing in the British virtual reality industry is the fusion between science and creativity to create work like this. The best way, really, to see what to explore, experience what I've talked about, is, of course, to do it. So to come back sometime in the next few weeks. But then also, here's a little tip for you. Set aside some time afterwards to critically chat about it, to discuss the work with your friends, with your colleagues. Because if you're trying to dissect it in the moment and be critical in the moment, it can take away from the work itself. So I just wanted to end on this tip, quite a pragmatic tip, which is that when you go into virtual reality, the best thing to do beforehand, with your feet firmly on the floor, take a deep breath and just go with it. You know, be ready to surrender yourself to the experience. But by all means, afterwards, put aside some time and a place for critique. And then hopefully as well, it will help you come up with some ideas. I hope this showcase does inspire some work and hopefully as well some collaborations. So thank you so much, and thank you for hearing me speak about the showcase.
Muchas gracias, Catherine.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I insist, everything that you've seen here, some kind of appetizer, but it wouldn't make sense if you don't make the effort of coming along from tomorrow until the 10th of June to the 4th floor in order to experience it and to see it in its real format, to have the real experience of what it is. Because to show a plain video, I mean, you can't have the idea of what the experience is going to mean. And just to continue about this vision that Catherine has given to us, about the selection that she has made in terms of experiences that you should see, for quite a long time in Spain, we luckily have a lab, in this case from the Spanish radio and television. It's an innovation lab that is being tracked we've been tracking it for a long time, and we have it has been awarded with a prize. And among the things that this lab does, sometimes we criticize what things we do with public money, etc. I think it's really healthy to admit when somebody like the Spanish radio and television takes the risk to innovate, to look for new languages, new formulas, to innovate in just one word. And in this case, we've invited one of its members, Esther, sorry, I don't remember your surname, is Perez Amat. She's a member of the Innovation Lab in Spanish radio and television, and she's going to speak about a project that perfectly fits here. And it's about the 360 scene. So, Esther, here you have the remote control. So, you have the floor.
Bueno, buenas tardes a todos.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I would like to say thank you to Telefónica Foundation for inviting us to this forum. From the Innovation Lab, we are delighted to come along in order to show our projects to you. And in this case, my intention is to explain what Escena 360 is, the magic of going into scene. Now, it is a free app it's a free app where we compile different experiences of scene arts, immersive scene arts. As you can see, we have 6 projects. Can you hear me? Yes, okay, perfect. Okay, we have 6 projects, sorry. But before speaking about the Scena 360, I would like to tell you how we have done Evento 360, and I would like to inform you about the lab that has been introduced by our colleague here, but we were born in 2011 with the goal of telling things in a different way on the internet. The intention of exploring new digital narration techniques, and we are a small island in the big dinosaur that Spanish radio and television is. We have 3 editors. One of the editors is the responsible of the lab. This is Miriam Ernat. 3 developers, 1 designer, and another editor. Well, 2 or 3 years ago, since we have this technology, we are quite obsessed with the idea that our stories have to be as immersive as possible. And in this sense, we started to work with VR, with different people from the Olympic Games from Rio de Janeiro, for example. You could go to see how different women were training before going to the Olympic Games. And after that, we created this app, the Scena 360. It's just some kind of bucket that compiles these scenic arts that are quite different. We have 6 projects that started with contemporary drama, classic drama, ballet, and we have an essay of the orchestra and the choir of the Royal Theatre. And now I'll focus on how we've created Evento. Evento 360 is a very beautiful experience that was developed with the National Spanish Ballet. And I would like to ask you, how many people here, yeah, it works? How many people here have seen this experience that is available on the desktop, in the lab, on the lab website when you download the app, Scena 360? Maybe you have found some teasers on the news or on social media, etc. I don't know if you can raise your hand. Who has watched anything about this experience? No, not many people. So that's why I've brought a small teaser, a 1-minute teaser. It is a stereoscope experience that lasts 3 minutes, and we value the fact that the ballet Spanish director adapted one of his choreographies to an immersive environment. So if you agree, let's watch the video so that we can have an idea of what we're talking about and how this experience works.
Bueno, espero que os haya gustado.
Okay, I hope you've liked it, and I hope you want to watch more. There's just 1 minute, and after that, the music starts to have some taconeo with that heels movement with of the dancers. I don't know if you've heard some birds that were messing around, because this piece, the sound is very important, and it has been really helpful to make it more immersive. I'm bringing a message of someone that can't be here today. He's on tour in France, and he's one of the persons that has helped the most that this project is successful. So let's listen to it, if you don't mind. Hello, dear friends that are the Fundación Telefónica. I'm Antonio Najarro, the Spanish National Ballet Director, and I'm going to explain the experience that we have with an extraordinary project, a very interesting and very innovative project that has been really interesting for us and that has provoked different feelings and a very new experience to us. And this is the Evento 360 of VR in collaboration with Spanish radio and television, and my experience as choreographer that has made one of the choreographies for the Spanish National Ballet, specifically a step that is called Luz, that belongs to the Evento Ballet, interpreted by two dancers of the Spanish National Ballet, Inmaculada Salomón and Sergio Bernal. And what we've done is to move this choreography to an unusual space for us. This is the greenhouse of the slaughterhouse, old slaughterhouse in Madrid, and we have been advised by a group of experts in Madrid, and it has been a very interesting experience to us. Luckily, I'm a choreographer that I've been immersed in ice skating, and in my choreographies I must have a perception of the fact that there are audience all around in 360 degrees. So this is why many times I've had to change my creation goal at a theater, for example, where we have an audience in front of us, and what we do is that, well, all our energy, our positions, the highlights of choreographies are highly focused in the front. But in this case, for example, in ice skating, the fact is that the audience of a stadium has to enjoy the best moments of the choreography every single moment. So I've had to build these choreographies thinking of these 360 degrees. This step number 2 of Evento, although it's focused on a theater with a front audience, the truth is that my choreographies are highly detailed. I mean, I take care of the movement of the hands, the compenetration between men and women through their eyes, their steps, etc. So the fact that this VR lets the spectator to have a great proximity in every angle to the movement and the performance, the theater performance of the dancers, I consider that it's amazing, because we as dancers and as choreographers are constantly increasing the expression so that the audience that are, for example, at the 30th row of a great theater can perceive the feelings that come from a small gesture. But the experience, the VR 360 experience, makes the audience to feel the dancer absolutely close to them. They can see how perfect their movements are. They can see the movements of the dresses that they're wearing. So I consider that it is something that emotionally and visually it contributes a great thing to the audience. The dancers are delighted with this experience. We've had to talk to our people, and we've lived what is to position a choreography in different angles to compared to what we usually do, and it has been a great experience when I've seen the result. Maybe I've been really moved because I think that we're even more moved compared to a usual theater, and technology increases expression and emotion, I think, because the message is much more powerful. So I totally support this technological progress in order to progress in terms of art message, and I am absolutely satisfied. Congratulations to all the team on my behalf, on the behalf of all the dancers that have participated in Evento 360 degrees, and I hope that we can have a new experience in terms of collaboration with new technology and with the progress of the expression of feeling of dancing. A big kiss to everyone. Okay, so it's clear that Antonio Najarro was delighted with the experience. I think that he is waiting for the VR companies to take note of it, because he wants to have another AR or VR project to develop it with the National Ballet. he's really open-minded to explore new languages, etc. And I would like to tell you how we came across this idea. Evento 360 is a transmedia piece of news that includes what we call the soul mimic. I think that we have to work with the best people in the world. Here, in this case, we have Raquel Martin. And she told us, why don't we do something for the International Day of Ballet? Well, in the lab we started to think about that. Let's move to a meeting with Antonio Najarro and his team. We moved there and we said, Antonio, with the National Ballet, we want to make a VR piece for 360, Evento 360, about 3 minutes. What do you think? Antonio had never done anything about VR, and he hardly knew what we were talking about. He didn't know what was stereoscopic, monoscopic, how we recorded, etc. But we went out with a very difficult agenda in order to fit all the dates, but he knew from the very beginning that the choreography was going to be successful, and it was going to be a lento, and this step number 2 that is called Luth. After that we had a coffee and we started to have a great brainstorming about how to tackle this VR, what we wanted to tell in this transmedia project, and we had 2 ideas. We wanted to join with the National Ballet. We wanted a VR piece where the dance was out of the stage, at a church, at a market, at a park, wherever. And our colleague Raquel told us that Antonio had said publicly that dance is a universal language, and as a language he was able to express it. He was able to express better with his body in order to express feelings that are hard to express with words. So we clearly saw that we had to ask the National Ballet to make some improvisation of different feelings at different short videos in order to try to invite people to express their feelings, to record their own videos, to make them viral with the hashtag Dímelo Bailando. So time went by, Raquel and the editors started to shoot these feelings. Feelings, for example, what would you tell in 40 seconds of dance? How would you say, you've punished me, or it's Friday at last, or you've disappointed me, or I love you a lot? They are amazing videos that I truly encourage you to watch. They are on the website. And this is how we started working. We knew that we wanted to, apart from the immersive experience, we wanted to convey the story of the National Spanish Ballet, the past, present, and future of Spanish dancing. Okay, and well, I've told you how this idea came along, how the creativity came along, and well, at the end of March of last year, in April more or less, we were working on the lab. 2 projects at the same time, the 100 Days of Trump in a transmedia project, and at the same time all the samples of the soul mimic. So the editor painted it and the developers put a framework in it, and we developed different contents with the text that we've created, etc. And what I wanted to tell you is that at RTVA, the Spanish Radio and Television, we don't have the knowledge, we don't have the technology to develop these VR projects on our own. So we look for allies out of our company. We work with different companies, but in this case, we work with the people from Brain, with Alberto Triano and his team. And at a second meeting, no, sorry. I went back. No, sorry. Yes, I wanted to tell you that one of the things that was an obsession for us is where can we shoot this piece. Our first option was the park that you can see on the top of the slide. Here you can find many trees with flowers in March, in spring, and we thought that it was incredible to put Sergio and Inma dancing there. We also visited the old Príncipe Pío station that I think that is in work, that they are building a drama school there, I think. We have the Daoiz and Velarde pavilion. We were to the Retiro too, the Reina Sofia Museum, and it was very difficult to try to fit everything. So after different chattings, we discovered that dancers need a flamenco floor to dance and to give heel hits to this taconeo that is called in Spanish. So we had to see where we could bring it. And the park was a little bit difficult because the floor was not stable. So the town hall wanted to collaborate with us, and from the culture department they decided to give a space to us, and we still have not defined that. I'm going to be very brief on this, but these are all the stages that we had to go through until launching the project. At the second meeting with the team from The Brain, with Antonio Najarro, his supporters, his communication and media team, we realized, we went in further details, and Antonio Najarro saw that he had to adapt his choreography, he had to adapt the music, maybe he has to cut it. Stereoscopy is shoot by fields. The sphere is divided in 4. We will shoot this angle, you'll have to repeat the dance here, you'll have to repeat it here, and this and here too, and after that we will all hide behind them. He had to understand how this shooting was going to be, and he made a question, is how long do you need to be with the dancers in order to shoot this? 3 minutes piece. And at that moment in time Alberto Triano said, 5 hours? And Antonio was absolutely scared. How am I going to how can I do this? I mean, they can't go for 5 hours. And in that moment, and there was a little bit of crisis because the agendas were a little bit more difficult, but the Madrid greenhouse saved us. It's just in front of the old slaughterhouse here in Madrid, and it is, well, don't worry, Antonio, it will be 4 hours, it will be just here. We'll visit it. There are different ecosystems. We'll be able to shoot the movements of this choreography at different spaces, and it will be a marvelous piece of art. Out of this meeting, we went with a technician that helped us take the measurements of the small theater of that glass palace. I don't know if you know it. It's white with glass and has different ecosystems, and in the middle, it has a small theater. And there we decided to put that flamenco floor for the dancers to dance. We asked for that floor, we made the order, so the shooting day came, there was a technical rehearsal with the dancers, etc., and Antonio was so generous, so flexible in adapting his choreography to the needs of the 360 script. He had to be 1 meter close, and he couldn't go further, I mean, because otherwise the VR would make no sense. He knew what he had to do. He was with us all during the whole morning. It was really tiring because we had to repeat it for more than 10 times, but we were all very happy with the result. We recorded the sound. We had to bring a good sound so that the dancers could record with the real sound. But we also did it silent with your music brain. We also recorded the birds, all the fonts. I mean, the sound is an ambisonic sound. It's positional sound. And if you see it with glasses and you move, you'll see that sound changes. There are some birds coming on your right, some water coming on from your left. And if you know this experience, I encourage you to watch it again. And at a second action sphere, because the greenhouse is an open public space, it's free. I mean, it only closes on Mondays. We recorded this on Monday. There's, for example, someone reading, some people playing, etc. And you can have the intuition that there is life there. In parallel to that, we're working on the development of the samples of the soul, mimic of the soul. We have this first VR tests. We really like them. And well, this is a whole process, a whole protocol with different qualities. You have to upload it to Android, iOS. And we launched the transmedia project. And we started to sell it through the social media, radio, and television. These are some of the examples of how we try to sell this report. We generate a great amount of content around the VR piece. So we never try to sell it all at once. We try to diversify. We launch things beforehand, and the International Dance Day was a Saturday, I think. So Friday, the Spanish ballet company went to made a rehearsal for the public out of their theater. That day we recorded Emma wearing those glasses and seeing herself through these glasses for the first time. He said, I'm working over me. It's an experience of having them just in front of you. And this is about feelings. On Instagram, we decided to change the first frame, the first image, the first capture of the video, not to generate... Well, we were launching different videos, we were launching different feelings, and at the end of the day, you could see a different project. Well, it's not new because it's now many people do it, but we understood that we had to put a frame to the video so that it could be beautiful, and this was the example of how we sold it. There are different pictures of the project here if you're interested on the most technical part. The Palacio de Arganzuela, the greenhouse, has different rooms where we had this edition set in order to check that the material was correct, because it was really difficult to launch this production and to go to the post-production room to say, well, I can do the stitching because there's something wrong. And this was the camera that was being used. It is a Sony Alpha 7S2, I think that I said it correctly, with a fish eye. As of today, Stena 360 started in November 2016. The last works have been launched in March 2018. It's a rehearsal in the with the choir and the orchestra of the Royal Theatre. It was Cyrano de Bergerac in summer, classical theatre. And I hope that you want to feel these experiences. I can guarantee that with glasses it's absolutely different. You can see them on the desktop, on your computer. But if you have the chance of watching them with glasses, it's a different feeling, and it's absolutely different. What have we learned throughout this way since November 2016? Success is about understanding the narrative. We've worked with private companies, we've worked with public companies with very difficult agendas. Everybody that is involved in the production, since the conception, distribution, etc., has to understand that they are doing VR narrative, a 360 script, and we have to give immersion to the story, because otherwise it would make no sense. We're not creating a good story, and the user won't feel that he's surrounded by this scene. To ally with the best people improves your projects. In Spain, we're very lucky because we have many VR pioneers and very good people developing VR. We're very happy with the companies that we've worked with. We still learn a lot them, but you have to have very good allies in terms of topics. In theater, for example, we had Danny Galindo. He's the one that knows the most about theater. He opened the doors of many theaters and the agendas of many actors. In terms of dancing, we had Raquel Martin and Spanish National Ballet. And in terms of distribution, it's also important to have the best people there. We had the networks of Spanish radio and television, but we also work with the Royal Theatre or the Almagro Festival. This way you'll have a successful project. There are no fixed rules in VR production. Last year I talked to some pioneers in VR that told me, but how old is VR? No, it's a 3-year-old kid. Okay, so this year it's a 4-year-old kid, so it's changing dramatically as it's happening with the radio, television, cell phones. AR, VR are changing a lot, and there are no written rules. Everything is possible. On the other hand, the more defined the user role is, the better. We have to look for excellence in the quality of light, in the adaptation, so that the user can have a defined role. In our case, we want him or her to perceive that it's another actor actor of the scene. He wants to feel that dancers are dancing for him or her. He has to perceive that he's on the stage. He's a privileged position in scene arts. But there are other experiences. For example, on TV, Ministerio del Tiempo, the Time Ministry, where the user has a role, has a mission. And when the user has a mission and the work has been correct, and it is a VR narrative, the user stays with you longer because he wants to see how this mission ends up. And in terms of distribution, if you generate content that embraces this VR, you'll be able to diversify, you'll have more sales time of this product. But it's also important to be updated. I mean, these projects have been sold on the Theatre or Dance International Day, the 40th anniversary of the Almagro Festival, the Royal Theatre anniversary, and we are able to reach more people this way. We want to be all around. We want to be at every device. We want to reach as many users as possible. We are the Spanish radio and television, and this is a very new technology. We admit that our user data are quite modest, but our goal is to make pedagogy with these new narratives, to innovate and to make our audience get accustomed to listen to this VR, AR, so that they can feel that they have to get used to these terms, because these terms will be very common for everybody in the future. So that's all from my side. Thank you for inviting me. I encourage you to visit our website to enjoy these experiences, and if you have any question after the event, I'll be around to answer it. Okay? Thank you very much.
Bueno.
Thank you, sir. So Sarah has said this, but I insist. Next week, you'll have this experience in order to see it in our showroom. As we have very important on Skype, it is the end of the event, there's no better way than wrapping it up with one of the protagonists, with one of the dancers. I want to invite somebody very special. It's Ludovic Asemart. He's head of arts of the British Council, so that he can introduce Tamara Rojo. So Ludovic, we will end up with you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Very quickly, if you don't know Tamara Rojo, I would like to tell you that she's like a living national treasure. She's one of the best Spanish artists. And I'm not saying this. All the awards that she has obtained say this. La Légion d'honneur from France, or in Britain, for example. She has been in Madrid, she has been at the Victoriate Company, and she has also been the first soloist at the English National Ballet before moving to the Royal Opera House. And today she's the art director of the English National Ballet. The company has audiovisual trajectory that is quite well-founded, because they take care of all their audiovisual materials. I truly recommend you a video about emerging talents. It's a competition about their best dancers. It will be the 11th of June in London. It's amazing. But today we'll speak about Giselle. Giselle is one of the VR experiences that you'll be able to enjoy from tomorrow within the Catherine Allen selection. And we'll speak about the collaboration that the English National Ballet has had, the collaboration that she has had as the dancer of this piece, in order to see how it fits in the company. And the Eurovision moment now. Good afternoon, London. Good afternoon, Tamara.
Good afternoon.
Porque sabemos que
Thank you very much for being with us, because we know that you have a very busy agenda. You are on tour with Giselle that will be first performed at the end of the month. So the first question is the story, how this project emerged, how this project was conceived, how this VR project was conceived. And also we'll speak about Giselle, about Akram Khan.
Well, actually, it was born from Sky and Factory 52 that contacted Azran before. We had worked with Sky before. We had done some other projects with them. We knew that they were working with totally new ballet with Akram. It was the first time that we collaborated to make this ballet with him, and they wanted to capture this work that we were doing in a different way. We, as you have said, are always interested in exploring ways of reaching a greater audience. We are a company that tours rather in the UK, but also at an international level, and this is our vision. We want to reach the greater audience possible, and we're obviously interested in using technologies for doing so, because there is a limited number of performances that we can perform in a year. So if you want to reach out of your country or your continent and to reach a greater number of audiences, the new technologies allow us to do so. The English National Theatre has a department that is focused in exploring new technologies, and we are always exploring new ways of reaching to a greater number of people and to innovate in ballet. So when they reached to us to do this, and we found it immediately very interesting and something that we wanted to explore.
Estábamos comentando antes.
We mentioned this. You are the protagonist of this VR piece. How was your experience of moving from the physical stages to this digital experience? Because we have listened to Antonio Najarro. It's different. How was your experience about?
From the very beginning, we thought that we didn't want to adapt something that had already been made for the stage, for the VR. We wanted to have a concept that had a camera positioning and the limitations, if you want to call them so, of the concept that we wanted to give to this piece of work. So the Giselle solo, we had to rewrite it with this in mind. If you see the solo on the stage and you see the VR solo, you see that the experiences are completely different. I think that this is crucial in order to be successful, especially in terms of the dancing quality. You cannot only capture something that has been developed to be seen from just one angle. So you need to analyze the piece and to recreate it or start from scratch in order to work in VR.
Estaba antes Catherine.
Yes, it's like Catherine was saying. I mean, the VR experience lets us go through this barrier and to enjoy dancing in a different way. Just one question. When producing this VR piece, has the physical production have any influence? Has there been any kind of feedback between both pieces?
Obviously, the physical performance influenced the VR. The physical performance did not have an influence because it was a completely different performance. It had the same theme, the same concept, let's say the same suit, and the choreography is from the same choreographer, but it was a concept that needed to have its own life. So the performance on the stage didn't have such a great influence on the VR performance because it was a different thing that we wanted to show. Something, the VR is to be experienced by two people, not by a greater audience. And obviously, the other way around, it did influence. And just to finish, when we talk about cultural aspects, we always invite the public to attend the physical shows. How did you manage to sell this concept to your colleagues and to the board? What was the added value of creating this piece when the important thing is, at the end of the day, to fill the theaters? Well, for us, the important thing is to reach the greater number of people, and this you can do it physically in the theater and you sell the tickets in a different way, not only with these exercise of VR. For that you have different media campaigns, but this was attempted to reach a different public, a different audience that maybe is not interested in coming to the theater, or maybe is not interested in the ballet. And this is what is motivating us. It's not an excuse, let's say. It's not a way of complementing what we do on the stage. It's actually a different path. It's reaching a new audience, which is very important for our mission, as we are devoted to bringing the best ballet to the greater audience possible. It doesn't matter who they are or where they are. We want to reach an audience that is very far away, that might never consider even attending the theater. So it was not difficult to convince them, because it's something that we already had in mind. We wanted to present ballet in different ways, not only on the stage, and we will keep experimenting with new technologies and design ballets that maybe are only created for new technologies, that do only exist on a smartphone or on a harsh reality, because this will reach a different audience that might not be interested in the theater. This does not mean that we're going to leave aside a real-life performance, but that we want to reach a greater audience that has very different interests.
So we will see what the next productions are. We want you to be here in Madrid to present it with us. So please note that Giselle will be in cinemas too, in theaters, because it's part of the English National Ballet. I mean, they want to present this piece of art to as many people as possible. So thank you very much, Tamara, for being with us tonight. And everybody will be able to enjoy this experience from tomorrow on at Espacio Telefónica, just here. Thank you very much, Tamara.
Thank you.
Y te devuelvo la palabra.
Sí. And I give the floor back to you, but please don't leave, because we're going to wrap up. So it's a great honor. I mean, this woman is magic. It was Skype. I can't even think of having her close to me. It's incredible. In order to feel her close, yeah, in terms of VR. Well, we've generated chats. We've opened a window. I guess that there are many questions. All the protagonists of this event, but Tamara, that is in London, are physically here at the networking part. The people that know us, well, this is not over. It will continue here at this room. We'll have Catherine, Ludovic, we'll have Stair, we'll all be there in order to generate this discussion, not to keep on speaking. But please keep in mind that this is the beginning of more snacks. There will be more thematic weeks. This will end up in January with a big event of this festival, but I insist on the fact that, well, you should go to the website. There are free tickets. You have to choose good timing in order to give a chance to these experiences with its native format. Everything's ready with goggles, classes, etc. And we will help you in order so that you can enjoy these experiences. Thank you very much to you all.